With increasing number of fashion and lifestyle influencers claiming to be sustainability influencers, are they becoming a threat to the growing movement? How are the terms influencer and advocate different? Or are they the same? Do we need to put in place certain checks and balances to see if your favorite influencer is truly sustainable or is just using the hashtags to trend? All this and more with my guests and speakers for this episode. Please welcome Devyani Kapoor, sustainable fashion advocate and founder, Shuffling Suitcases, and Mridula Joshi, zero waste advocate and founder of Ullisu. You're listening to Ethically Yours, a podcast to simplify sustainability, and I'm your host, Darshana. A report stated that over the last 5 years, brands have collaborated with social media influencers across channels to generate awareness, and influencer marketing grew from an ancillary marketing tactic to a whopping $5 to $10 billion industry. The job of an influencer typically revolves around creating content that might get the brands the reach, leads, and even sales conversions. While this might sound straightforward for industries like food, tech, travel, fitness, or even fashion and beauty, the landscape changes when we talk about sustainability. Let's start with you, Devyani. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, honestly, if you ask me, since I belong to the same strata of people who call themselves influencers, I started my journey as a fashion blogger. I have worked with the biggest of fast fashion brands also, and I'm not ashamed of sort of saying that I did. But it was only when I understood what I was doing was wrong, was when I started to do my own research, and towards the end of the journey, I started to call myself an advocate, a sustainability advocate. So I understand that these days every second person is an influencer. I feel it is the most used word these days because everybody wants to somehow influence other people. It's become like the new thing. If you're an influencer, you've arrived. So I understand that we have used and abused the word influencer. And now I think we are on the journey of doing the same with people who call themselves sustainability advocates. You need to understand being an advocate comes with a lot of responsibility. And for the past 7 years of me being in the industry and initially being in the space of being a fashion blogger to now being a sustainability advocate, I've seen how the graph really goes up. It becomes the new thing and everybody wants to get onto the bandwagon. I think that is what is happening with sustainability advocates now.
Mridula, you are sharing your life with your audiences and showing them how to live a zero waste life. I mean, you are legit influencing people's day to day habits. Would you still not call yourself a sustainability influencer?
I think the word comes by default because of our platform and the way we run it. If I wouldn't be called an influencer if I got popular on, I don't know, maybe Facebook or via some other method. I think I'm called an influencer because I first started as an individual blog and now I'm a business. So it's a bit difficult to clarify to people, but yeah, I mean, the word makes me icky, but I do understand everything I say, everything I do does influence the day to day of people's lives who follow me. And I think when I see most influencer pages that are doing well, they're usually because of a few categories of content that they create. Either the content is extremely funny and everyone loves enjoying that, or the content is extremely aesthetic and everyone loves watching it. But when it comes to talking about sustainability, you are not selling anything funny or anything that looks very artistic. You are basically educating people. So it's very tricky to call yourself an influencer for something that for something sustainability related, because you need to have that responsibility to show that you are just as clueless as the rest of the people following their content. You need to have that humility. You need to show that you are in a process and you haven't reached the destination. And that, I think, should be very important for anyone who tries to talk about sustainability online. And as much as possible, I know we have reached that point where a lot of sustainable influencers have shown themselves as the perfect representation of it, and they've shown a very perfect version of it. But I think we have crossed that stage now, and we need as many people to be as realistic as possible while talking about sustainability now.
So, like both of you, actually, I've had a certain time in my life where I used to run an online marketplace too. And as part of Fairtrunk, we used to really question the brands on their sustainability practice before we actually got them on board. And that was purely to ensure that what we were offering our audiences and our consumers was, a truly honest product. So, as an influencer or as an advocate, and not as an entrepreneur of your marketplaces, if you were approached by a brand, what sort of checks and balances would you look out for before actually going ahead and promoting that product?
So, like I said, Darshana, I have been working with brands since 2013, which was my first time ever to work with a brand called Alan Solly. Of course, a fast fashion brand. But back then, I had no idea that I was working with a fast fashion brand, because hardly did we know about slow fashion, fast fashion, sustainability. All these terms have, become the in thing very, very recently. It wasn't back then that we knew what we were working with. But then constantly with me, there was one thing that kept on coming back, which is why I actually started shuffling suitcases in 2017. Every time I would work with a brand and a PR would approach me and tell me, okay, this is what we're going to pay you and this is what you're supposed to do. You wear this, you pose like this, you post a copy which says this, you use these hashtags and done. So that was the entire cycle of how the events would happen when you would collaborate with an XYZ brand. Now, every time I would want to know a little more about the brand, which were things like, what is the team behind, the brand? I know of the label, I know of the designer's name, but what beyond that? I don't know anything apart from these two things that you've told me. And every single time I would try and question these things, they would either not want to work with me or not want to answer these questions. This is actually what led, for me to start shuffling suitcases, where I wanted my brands to be absolutely transparent, absolutely honest. Even if they were doing something wrong, which was not a part of being a sustainable brand, at least be honest about it. So that is something that when I work with any brand today as an influencer or a sustainability advocate, beyond, running my brand, this is what I want from them and this is what I ask of them. I want them to be honest. I want them to be transparent about, how the brand works like. If you check these two boxes for me, we can talk beyond that.
Mridula, what would be your thoughts on this?
I use the products that I sell on my marketplace. I've used it at least once, and I make sure I am completely happy with it before I am confidently promoting it. Because so many times, and we notice this as people who are advocating for sustainable habits, there are a lot of alternatives online, alternative products to help you live zero waste, which are promoted in a lot of excitement. But once someone uses it and they realize, hey, this is actually not as good as the thing that I'm replacing, I'm not completely happy with the experience. People don't give that feedback openly, and because of that, products don't improve. And that was a main concern for me, because if I am finding some product that is a plastic free alternative, can perfectly work with people who want to adjust around it maybe, but I try and make sure that I can bring as many products that regular people who are used to mainstream products can adapt to easily as well.
I'm glad you brought this up because, in my personal journey also, I switched to a lot of products to be a little more mindful. Ditched the toothpaste and then got into either those toothpaste tablets or, those charcoal powders or those baking soda and mint powders. But what you said is so true. I think that transition is very difficult. And for somebody who may not be that committed, like the people in this room, it can really be putting off. I mean, what I do is also when I buy things for myself, I also gift it to my family saying, sub use karo, like everybody, let's go through transition. But that level of intent is different in different people. So even if I have not liked it the first couple of times, I'm like, no, it's for the greater good. Let's just go for it. Let's push for it. So as both of y'all who are selling products like that, what suggestions could you give to both the parties? Even brands need to up their game maybe, and even consumers need to maybe get more involved or look at it from a different point of view. So how can we sort of bridge this gap?
So basically, the subject is about how we can make the pie grow bigger, and how products can get better, right? So I mean, I have a slightly different opinion on this. I feel like the laziest people innovate the best, right? So all these people who are making excuses, or they're not completely happy with the sustainable products, they have good feedback to give. We should listen to that feedback. We should actually dive in, and we should innovate more and more. But we have to keep in mind, we don't go back to the old ways, or the polluting ways, or the polluting materials, but we keep that feedback in mind and use the sustainable materials and the knowledge that we have to create a much more superior product. And we have to keep in mind that we are selling to people not just who care about sustainability, or the planet, but who are just regular, everyday people who are busy with their lives. I think if we remember that, market to that, cater to that, that will grow the pie much bigger. In such cases, being very particular about every label might not be the best. At that time, what I have done something in my store as well. I have made these kits where I have curated all kinds of dental products in one kit, because I don't know what dental product alternative you're going to enjoy. A lot of people don't like tooth powder, and then they give up and they go back to their old toothpaste. Then they try another product, then they don't like it, then they give up on the whole idea of zero waste and they quit. So I wanted to create a market where it's like, okay, if you're paranoid about this, here's an option for you. If you don't care about that, here's an option for you. So create as many options as possible, and keep in mind there are all kinds of people who exist. And I think it's going to boom up really well.
That's very true and very promising. Mridula, I have seen you share your journey at one of the events that we had done in Bombay. When you spoke about your transition to the lifestyle that you are living, it was very honest and it was truly, truly commendable. With your work over the years and with the way you've been sharing your journey, what kind of impact do you think that your work and your advocacy has made so far? And would you have any particular personal instances to share?
So I think what it has done is it has made the idea of zero waste seem more achievable, and not a matter of morality or sainthood. I think we have managed to remove the gatekeeping nature of living sustainably, and urban millennials who usually have several excuses to not make an effort can see themselves on a page, because I constantly talk about my mistakes. I constantly talk about the times I'm going wrong, the social situations which curb my ability to be 100% sustainable all the time. I think people see themselves in my stories, and they still manage to see how I live zero waste despite all of that. So I think showing that imperfection, and then showing that even in your worst, these are the things that you can still do, has made a huge impact to my followers, who send me messages like, I used to think I couldn't do it, or I used to think this was only for privileged, or I had given up long back, and you have motivated me to restart again, but like go easy on myself as well this time. So those are the kind of messages I tend to get a lot.
Also, I have to say, especially with respect to zero waste living, it's not a very glamorous side of sustainability to talk about. So, how do you sort of keep it glamorized? Because I think on Instagram, especially, people want to look at beautiful things. And I know that you don't go ahead and put that extra filter on what it is. You are as real as anybody could get. But do you think that there is a need to sort of look at zero waste content from that point of view, or people just have to grow into this reality?
No, no. I mean, the only reason you're getting to see my real pictures is because I'm not that great at editing them. But I think that's just a happy coincidence. Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are a lot of influencers doing a great job of making it look good. But I think because I don't take that kind of an effort to maybe do my room in a very Instagram worthy way, or keep paint my compost khamba in a very beautiful way. So I just don't have the time for it. And I think that's part of my reality. I'm that regular middle class apartment living girl who doesn't have the time to clean up her own room, who's trying to live zero waste. So it just adds to the part of the story for me. But if I had the ability to make it more aesthetic, I definitely would. I think some people are attracted by the beauty first, and then the ideas, they open up to the ideas later, So that's definitely there. But there's also a crowd of people who are tired of that, who are like, hey, why are we supposed to make it look pretty all the time? I want something realistic. So there's a crowd that exists for that as well. So I think everyone is playing a very good role in influencing whoever they can, and as the volume of people who are advocating increase, the diversity in the pages will also increase. You're going to see maybe a party girl having her own zero waste page, or someone who's a corporate worker who has their own zero waste page. I would love to see more diversity in people who are choosing to live sustainably. I want the stereotype to go away, like, very sincerely.
When you talk about diversity and sustainability, Devyani, you did a sustainable wedding. And I think it was a hit. I followed it through and through. And I'm sure you inspire a lot of people. Talk us through a little bit of that entire experience.
In fact, only 10 minutes before I got onto this chat with you, I was actually looking at my final video of the wedding. So it actually took me back, and I'm superly refreshed right now to talk about how it was and what all happened. I was very very sure when the whole topic of getting married started for me. I knew I wanted to do a sustainable wedding. I knew it won't be 100% sustainable wedding, but I wanted to do my part because people look up to me, and if this is something that I would be able to sort of knock, I would end up inspiring a lot of people. And that is the actual age group of people who follow me. From what I wore to how the wedding happened to the food to the stay, we tried being as sustainable as we could. My garments that were bought were actually fabrics that I bought myself. And I looked up this one tailor in a very small shop in, Hoska's village. I only had two new garments that I actually got stitched. One was my sari, which came directly from the artisans. I wore a jamdani dhakai. And the other one was my reception outfit, which was stitched by this guy who was in Hoska's. That was my wardrobe. And then coming over to, we did a very small wedding of 120 people in all, kids inclusive. So 120 people, very restricted food. We didn't want to waste food at all. It was a complete 1.5 day wedding. So we repurposed things, we reused things. The entire decor was done only once, and we shifted things around to make it look exciting every single time we would get photos done. And of course, all my functions were day functions because we didn't want to use the generator. So everything was done during the daytime except one function, which was the reception, which was like the culmination of the entire thing. Even the confetti that we used was actually leaves rather than those plastic usual confetti. So this is how we did the entire thing. Little differences everywhere, but actually in the end, it was the experience that people took back, and they took back learnings from the wedding, and that is exactly what I wanted to do.
Many, many congratulations for that. I think it is really, it's said to be the most important day of your life. And by doing this, like you said, I think it's a great opportunity to really involve your family in something that we want a larger group of people to really do, through our conversations, maybe digitally or through our work circles. We go about influencing so many people who we're not even related to. But I think this is truly amazing. And what I also like is that aspect of monetary sustainability that you brought into this. I think we talk about product and waste and what do we do about that, but that entire mental exercise of knowing that sustainability is not really just product, it's also practice and beliefs to a large extent. And on that note, I think I also read somewhere that you are starting a consultancy to help people do more sustainable weddings. Is that correct?
That is actually correct, and it boomed in the pandemic more because people now know that you can do a small wedding, and that is the only way that you can do it now. I did it out of choice, but I think people don't have a choice now. So very soon after my wedding, I started getting a lot of questions from my followers and their parents, in fact, saying that we want to do something like this. Can you help us? Can you connect us with people? So I said, with my schedule that I have, connecting every single person with a vendor is going to be super difficult for me. Thankfully, on my team, I have somebody who is an ex-event planner, and has also done large level weddings. So we all sat down and we said, okay, can we do something like this? We want to influence people and we want to change the way people do things. So I think if they are looking up to me and seeing that I can do it, being the so-called influencer, why not a normal person? And they also saw that you could do this while spending really less. So I think that also really sort of knocked the right doors, and we did start that. We did initiate conversations with a lot of people, but because of the pandemic, their wedding sort of got postponed. So it didn't materialize as such. But I do have a lot of leads that need to be sort of, the ends need to be met once things get better.
Great. I wish you all the best. Unfortunately, I got married 9 years ago, but maybe for my 10th wedding anniversary, we could do something more conscious. Mridulai, there is a very thriving community of zero waste practitioners and influencers also in the country. I see a lot of Facebook groups. I see a lot of people following you who are also exchanging experiences and notes. Let's say in the next 5 years, what do you see the landscape for sustainability influencers, zero waste included, in India to be like?
Yeah, I mean, right now, 2 years ago, if you wanted to go zero waste, you could do that if you joined a Facebook group and you exchanged advice, with people who had lived before that way, or, who have been living that way for a long time. But what I hope in 5 years, and what is the objective with the work that I'm doing, is that I make the information more open source. And, you don't have to run through 10 people and take like personal consultancy with like only one or two people that you know in your life in order to go zero waste, because that also really constricts the kind of information that you have. It comes from a biased place. It comes from a place or one or two people with their preferences, right? And you might end up viewing the entire zero waste movement as that person's interpretation of it. So what I'm hoping in next 5 years is that the information gets as open source as possible. A lot of people are introduced to zero waste in a very misled way. They think that maybe getting greenwash products is a great way to reduce their impact, and they only later, after 1 or 2 years of using the product, they realized, oh my god, that's actually not the solution. And we have seen that example with your biodegradable garbage bags which don't really biodegrade, or biodegradable sanitary pads which don't really biodegrade. So people are now slowly learning that, and now it's getting like this kind of knowledge is becoming more and more commonplace, and I'm really hoping that has been because people are making education more on zero waste more democratic. So I think in 5 years, hopefully you will not depend on one or two influencers to go zero waste. You will you will know how to look up the information yourself. There'll be enough available online that it's common knowledge, and anyone will know how to go zero waste just as easily as they know how to stay fit, or how to exercise, or how to do any kind of discipline or habit related changes.
Devyani, with respect to fashion, it's a little more complicated. There are too many people. Like zero waste still has a very straightforward path to it. You know that you switch to certain habits day to day, or you switch certain products. But fashion is complicated. There is every new brand who's coming up every day saying, "Hey, I am the most sustainable thing on planet Earth." There is a new influencer cropping up every day calling themselves conscious or positive or mindful. So in the next 5 years, what is important? Maybe let's say that somebody who is a regular fashion blogger right now and is on the way to become green, the so-called green. What is important for that person to look out for? What is it that he or she should be mindful of?
I think, Darshana, the first thing would be for them to realize what they're doing. If that realization doesn't happen, I don't think the process moves forward. They need to start questioning the right people. They need to start looking for answers. Rather than, wearing something and influencing other people, they need to actually go back and do their own research. If you don't do that, I don't think your influence is a positive influence. Anybody today could wear a garment coming from a so-called sustainable brand and call themselves a sustainable blogger. That is not how things work. Like, you can't be wearing Zara on one day and promoting their sale, and on the other day wearing a sustainable brand and saying, hey, from today now I'm a sustainable blogger. That is not how it works. you need to choose one direction for yourself first. You need to decide which way do you really want to go. Is it the sustainable way forever, or is it a way where you also include the H&Ms and the Zaras of the world while balancing your act with being a sustainable blogger? So I think one is the understanding of what you really want to do. You need to be very clear with that. Second, you need to accept what you were doing was wrong and now you want to convert yourself. So I think that is where it starts. There's a very gray area and there's a very thin line between on this side of being this side or that side. It's a very catch-22 sort of a situation. But I think from where we were to where we are in the whole fashion industry, we've taken a huge leap and it only grows from here. People are also getting very smarter day by day, so they know what they have to ask. And that's what I see on Instagram every single day. If there's a blogger who's posted something, they actually go back and question and put a link of the post before and say, okay, oh, you were promoting Zara and today you're calling yourself a sustainable blogger. So I think this sort of a understanding and acceptance and the right questions have started cropping up. So from here, I think we're taking the right direction.
So what Devyani spoke about was, it's perfect when someone's, I'm talking from the perspective of a person who will be following these pages, right? So that would be perfect. We need like much better ideals and, influencers to look up to when they're speaking about sustainability. And I'm being introduced to it for the first time. But say I have been living sustainably for 3 years now, right? And my principles and my foundations are intact. I know that even if I watch any other influencer who's wearing Zara or H&M, I'm not going to go back to that mindset ever again. So in those conditions also, I have noticed you need to just reach a point where you are self-assured that no matter which influencer you see online, you know what is the right thing to do. You know that they are just doing it to earn money, or they're just doing it because they're in the trap of having to get more and more followers, or more just earn more in general. And you can try and see value of influencers beyond that. For example, there's this one popular influencer, like I'm not going to take her name, but she obviously does fast fashion promotions and things like that. But the essence of her fashion blog is about restyling as much as possible, trying to come up with as many uses out of the clothes that you have in your wardrobe as much as possible, and not feeling the need to buy something new to look new. So that foundation is intact, and as someone who's living sustainably, I can see value in that kind of content as well. But yeah, in the beginning stages, when you're a newbie, it is very important to cut off from any influence that can make you feel like shopping more. And maybe once you've reached a more mature stage, you can go back to interacting with the real world to stay aware of how everyone else is talking like.
I think as a human nature, our wants will never end. So when you see something exciting, let's say at 11 p.m. in the night while you're on your bed, you're scrolling through your Instagram, you see something exciting. Forget being sustainable or slow or ethical or the terms that we use. Somewhere down the line, we actually tend to slip. And every time that reminder to come back to you that this is not what you want to choose, this is not what you want, or this is not what you need in your life is very difficult. So I think we all tend to slip. And I think I know of the influencer that you're talking about. What we forget seeing actually is they actually hold up to every single time tell you that, hey, I match this with this. The new this is actually a new product. So we need to see it through, and that will only come when we actually have the knowledge. When we actually start digging deeper in this whole, sustainability and living slow and living ethically, we actually need to start digging deeper. And that will only come when you start questioning. So it all actually goes back to start questioning. And that's when you will actually realize what is happening around you and where you need to cut yourself and stop yourself.
I totally agree with both of y'all. Personally, I have discovered a very powerful hack to curb this human instinct of just going behind whatever's pretty. Is you look at it, you go till the step of checking out, and you leave. And then you forget about it. If it haunts you, then you give it a second try and then you leave it again. So you're basically teasing your hormones so badly to a point where you realize that, boss, I don't need it. And I think that has really worked for me. It's me playing mind games with myself, but I think whatever works works. So, do you think we need to add some sort of an index to evaluate the credibility and consistency for the kind of content that is coming out from these self-proclaimed sustainability influencers, or at large in the future for people who are calling themselves sustainability experts or influencers?
I really think that with this whole influencer bit rising every single day, we need to have some sort of a regularization. We need to have some sort of a scrutiny, because today, if you actually see the reach of a newspaper versus the reach of a certain influencer, the influencer is actually influencing more people as compared to how the newspapers are doing today. So we need to really, really go back. All of us maybe need to come together and see what needs to be done, because if the influence goes in the wrong direction, we're all screwed together.
Yeah, I think influencers are not reporters. So should be one thing that is very clear, made clear by the influencers themselves, that do not come to me to seek the most verified resources, but understand I'm a human just as much as you going through this journey. So be open to disagreeing with each other, and understanding a middle ground with that disagreement. I think that's very important.
Great. I think this has been an interesting conversation. And before we really close this, I have a few personal questions. One is like a very utopic question where if you were to imagine an idealistic world, what would that look like for the two of you?
I don't know. I still haven't found the answer, but I think a perfect world for me would be where I'm growing the pie. I'm seeing people making more space in their wardrobes for slow fashion and slow living, as opposed to how much right now they have, fast fashion. The day when I see that the wardrobe space, the entire wardrobe space, the slow fashion has a little more space than the fast fashion. I think that personally for me, since I'm in the whole fashion sphere, would be the perfect world, would be the world where I would be very happy about the choices that people are making.
So I have not as much of a positive response for this question, because I think it is in our nature to fight all the time as community, over ideas, over what is right, what is wrong, and all of us tend to be split in most cases, right? So I think a sign of success would be how we've seen the feminist movement grow in the last few decades, and now we have reached a point where so many people understand it that they're fighting with each other over what is the true form of it. You know so I think the success for sustainability would be to reach a point where so many people are living sustainably in their own way. They've done their research and everything, that they are fighting with each other over what is more sustainable. Like, this is not the right way. No, this is how you should do it. So I think that kind of a healthy competition of ideas, all geared towards reaching the same goal, is something I would love to see in the future.
I love that. I just hope there is less fight and more love. That's my kind of ideal world in the future. I just want people.
I hope we're out competing each other by saying this is the number of trees I planted. What did you do? I hope that is what about in our life.
That sounds so good. That really sounds good. Well, last but not the least, there is one question that I ask all my guests. If you were to print a quote on a t shirt, what would that quote say?
I think mine would be change yourself, the world will change itself.
Nice. What about you, Mridula?
I'm not sure. I would probably print a meme over it. I don't know. I would not go for a print. I think anything that can make someone look at it and laugh, I would love a print like that. But other than that, I would actually try and not print anything, because I think, as someone who lives zero waste, that part of the t-shirt is very hard to take care of when you have to throw it away. So I'm so sorry to ruin your question, but I think I wouldn't print anything.
I thought as much that you will probably patch it up with some old t-shirt and create some art on your t-shirt instead of printing something. So that's a valid answer. I was expecting that from you totally. Great. So I would like to conclude by presenting my point of view on this by saying that I'm not a purist as such when it comes to sustainability. I would rather have a million of us doing things imperfectly than have a handful of people doing it perfectly. However, when you are putting out content and information for people who may be absolutely new or naive to this concept, creators must be responsible in what they are conveying or what they are standing out for. Thank you so much, Devyani and Ridula. It was an absolute pleasure. This conversation was very real at many levels, and I absolutely love that about both of you. Considering this is almost a no filter podcast, if there are any ruthlessly and brutally honest things that you want to say before we switch off, please go ahead.
I just want people who post about their journey online to be as honest with their failures as possible. I think we really have to get over the perfection and get over the idea that you're a failure if you're not following that perfection. So, yeah, I think enough of the purist mindset of influencing that we've been doing so far, and look into the more real life of everyday Indians.